Hello, Star Trek fans, and welcome to the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we're watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast, and welcome to Season 7, the last and final season of Deep Space Nine.
Until Deep Space Nine, The Next Generation.
Well, it won't be the end of us. We'll move on to something else. Probably
yeah.
Star Trek Voyager. We've also got Prodigy still going on. We have a few other things that we're talking about, so never fear. But we are in the last season of Deep Space Nine.
Which is fantastic to get here. You've managed to stick with me through this entire journey.
I almost gave up in that first horrible Ferengi episode.
True.
I remember saying to you, we don't have to do this anymore.
Your exact words, yes.
There were some rough things in the early days, but the show has grown on me, and we've made it to season 7, and now there's no stopping. I mean, it would have to be pretty bad from here for me to stop, because we're too close to the end. Now we just got to do it. We got to go all the way.
See, this is your bitter ender coming out.
There are times where, gosh, you've devoted so much time to something, it's hard to give up. But it could still offend me in such a way that I would be like, oh my God, I can't watch this anymore. But at this point, it would be tough.
It would have to be a Julian and Quark episode.
A duel, yeah. Well, we get a little of those too in this episode.
That's true.
So this episode is Season 7, Episode 1, Image in the Sand. It aired September 30th, 1998. So before we start talking about this one, anything to say about the last episode? Well, the last Deep Space Nine episode was Tears of the Prophets,
Yes.
But our last podcast episode was the Season 6 wrap-up. So I guess anything to say about either one of those?
I think it's interesting how much our opinion of the final episode of Season 6 diverged.
Oh,
I really enjoyed that episode, and you were very cool on it. I
liked everything except how they killed Jadzia.
Yeah.
That was criminal. A lot has happened since we recorded that episode, though. I mean, there was the wrap-up, there was a little time off, we went to WonderCon.
Oh, yeah, that was a lot of fun.
So, I mean, I barely remember how mad I was, but I was mad. Well, what do you think? Time to talk about this episode?
Yes.
Well, we do get a little recap from Majel Roddenberry about Sisko being chosen to plan the invasion of Cardassia.
Of course, because then the admirals can blame Sisko if anything goes wrong.
Oh, sure. And then we see the Power Wraith taking over Dukat and then killing Dax, which was the worst. And then we see the wormhole closing in on itself. We also get some of the scene where Sisko is talking to Jadzia's coffin about being a failure, which was tough.
It wouldn't be so bad if Avery wasn't so great at this character.
Yeah, at this point, he is fully Sisko, no doubt. And I think that gets us ready for the episode. Well, in the cold open, there are some Bajorans standing in a group chanting outside of the temple on the promenade. Kira and Odo are watching from above, and we learn Major Kira is Major no more. She is now Colonel Kira. Doesn't sound as good as Major Kira. There's too many cuz.
Yeah.
But it's nice that her contributions have been recognized.
They could have promoted her to Major General.
Oh, Major General Kira would have been amazing. I don't really understand the rank, so I'm not sure. Is this equivalent to a commander or a captain, or what's a colonel? Do they have colonel in the Navy, or is this...
No, they don't have colonel in the Navy.
Thought I read colonel was the equivalent, essentially, of captain.
Let me take a quick check. With the addition of the ranks of commander and lieutenant commander between lieutenant and captain, a Navy captain became the equivalent rank to an Army colonel. Yeah, you are correct.
Well, anyway, Odo and Kira are expecting Admiral Stuffed Shirt Ross to arrive, and Kira is concerned about this visit because he was being too pleasant when he called. She's like, he's up to something.
Isn't there an ancient Bajoran saying, beware of Starfleet admirals bearing gifts?
Was he bearing gifts? Who appear to be kissing your butt? Yeah, they want something. Well, as they start walking around, we see the tragedy that is Kira's hair in Season 7. What is this nonsense? It's like messy and long on one side with what looks like some small braids mixed in. It's hard to see when it's not high def. And then on the other side, it looks short, but it's maybe just pulled back behind her ears. I don't know, but was this a thing in the 90s?
I don't remember it.
God, now that I've said that out loud, I think my hair was kind of that length for a while, and it just was an absolute mess it maybe was the thing at that time.
I think it was earlier than that.
I chopped it all off, and then I never looked back. No, it was before that.
Yeah, it was in the 80s.
Because this is the very end of the 90s, right? This is 98.
Yeah.
And for me, my hair would have been shorter way before that. That's bad.
You seem to have found the hair pretty disappointing because I remember walking in on you watching it and you said, "What happened to Kira's hair?" That was your first comment.
Yeah. Like, what have they done? Well, we learn here that the people outside the temple are not ordinary worshippers. Kira calls them the cult of the Pa Wraiths, saying that used to be a joke, but now it's real.
So there are religious dissidents on Bajor.
Yeah.
You said for a long time about that. I can't believe everybody on the planet believes exactly the same thing. Well, this is your answer.
Yeah, Kai Wynn has managed to create a new sect. I mean, good job. She should be proud of herself.
I don't think they necessarily blame Kai Wynn in this. Do you think she's behind it?
I mean, her actions led to it. I don't know what happens after this, but as far as I'm concerned, this might have been her plan. Maybe she's just pretending to be interested in the prophets, and really she was part of the cult of the Pa Wraiths. I don't know, because we talked about in The Reckoning, maybe she was part of a prophecy that stopped the 1,000 years or whatever it was of happiness, the golden age. And if she did, then maybe she's the one who is a different part. She's in a different prophecy saying somebody stepped up and brought the cult of the Pa Wraiths out.
Okay, that is headcanon I hadn't even considered.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, and Kara also lets us know here that people in this cult are wearing red armbands, and she says they're popping up all over Bajor now. Odo says, well, a lot of people are feeling abandoned by the prophets.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
But they didn't have the wormhole before, and they believed in the prophets. And the wormhole is just closed.
Yeah, but all of the orbs have gone dark as well.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I bet even the holy people are starting to question things at this point. But that's a good point. They didn't have the wormhole before. They didn't know where the temple was before. Because somehow in Bajor, something happens and then they forget where things are for like thousands of years. I mean, that does sound like people.
I'm sure I put it over there.
Yeah.
So do you think the Church of Akorum is currently saying, see, told you he wasn't the real emissary?
Oh, absolutely. We also learn here that it's been 3 months since Sisko left and they've not heard anything from him. Odo says things may seem bleak, but there's always hope. Kira thinks it's cute that he's turned into an optimist, and he says it all started that day they kissed on the promenade. Aww.
Odo the optimist. What a turnaround.
Cute. Well, now we see the Defiant docking at the station. Nog, Bashir, and Miles are happy that convoy duty is over. Nog says at least convoy duty is safer than being on the front lines. That, of course, gets Worf's attention. He points out that the war is still going on and warriors should be in battle, not protecting a shipment of stem bolts.
He does seem to be pretty crabby about the idea of not being in battle and just doing the convoy duty.
Yeah, but I don't feel like this is different. I think Worf would have responded the same way even if Jadzia hadn't just died. I don't think he would appreciate Nog saying something like, oh, this is better than being on the front lines.
Oh, no.
Well, Worf leaves the bridge in a huff. Bashir and Miles tell Nog not to worry about it. Worf is still cranky over the death of his wife.
Yep.
But they do all agree that they miss Captain Sisko, I guess because they don't like cranky Worf as the captain.
Yeah. Having a cranky Klingon as captain, probably not fun, no.
No.
I do question if maybe this is a misallocation of resources, perhaps?
Convoy duty with the Defiant?
Yes, with an experienced crew that is also very combat effective. So, has the Federation just allocating resources? Or, maybe this... Oh, okay, I'm talking myself into it. Maybe this convoy was so critical, it had to get through regardless of anything. So you had to put your best people defending it.
Well, that is what I was going to say. But also remember, they don't have Sisko, so they don't have the captain. And there was the whole thing about Worf will never be a captain because of that thing he did in Change of Heart, which was dumb. Yeah. Maybe they don't think they have an appropriate leader.
That's true. And Jadzia was the other captain, and she's not available right now.
Now we go down to Grandpa Joe's restaurant. I say we go down like we're right above it, but we're not. This is on Earth. As Sisko is playing the piano while Jake worries about his dad, it seems Sisko hasn't even left the restaurant in 3 months, so Jake wonders how he's really ever going to figure anything out.
Yeah.
And then Sisko's baseball rolls off the top of the piano, and when he reaches for it, he's thrust into a vision where the baseball is sitting in some sand, and Sisko is digging desperately for something. He eventually uncovers the face of a woman in the sand, and her eyes open, and this takes Sisko out of the vision.
Yes.
He tells Jake he had a vision from the prophets, saying he was on Tyree in the desert, digging in the sand. He uncovered the face of a woman that he didn't recognize, but he knows that he has to find her.
Yeah, he has no idea who this woman is.
Right.
And also in this scene, Jake says about how Ben has been basically jamming on the piano all day for hours and hours.
Yeah, he is definitely moping around in one place, which I guess for him, he's looking for clarity, but really he just appears depressed, I should imagine, from the outside. And that's probably the state he's in.
Well, and the worst thing is he could have had clarity, but Julian took it away from him.
Well, that's true. Way back in Rapture. And we cue the theme song.
We had an 8-minute opening here. I should go back and look. I wonder if that's the longest one we've had.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't kept track. I'd have to go back and look at all my notes. Well, back on the station, Admiral Ross is telling Colonel Kira about a Romulan named Senator Kretek. She's a strong supporter of the Alliance, and she's coming to the station because Starfleet wants a few Romulans stationed there. Kira is not thrilled, but Ross didn't come to ask for permission. He's just letting her know as a courtesy.
So the Admiral is being a jerk, as per Admirals.
Yeah.
Plus, as this is a Bajoran station in Bajoran space, shouldn't he be asking the Bajoran government for permission?
I just don't know how that works.
I think she'd tell him to go to hell.
Because we've talked about this before, where who's in charge of the station, and you have always said that it's a Bajoran station. So, yes, you would think that the Bajorans would need to approve it.
Right.
Are the Bajorans in the Alliance? They must be.
Yes.
So then it seems like they would have had to all come to an agreement. But it doesn't seem like it here. It seems like they didn't tell anybody.
Right.
Yeah, it's suspicious. I agree. At least before Admiral Ross leaves, he does tell her that she's done a fine job filling in for Sisko. So at least that was nice. Now to Cardassia, where Weyoun is congratulating Damar and his troops for keeping the enemy bottled up in the Chentaka system, which is where we started the attack on Cardassia last season.
Yep.
Apparently we didn't get much farther than that after 3 months. Damar is having some Kanar, and Weyoun thinks maybe he drinks too much. I mean, if you're drinking this much at work, you might want to look at yourself in the mirror.
Well, I think here we see for certain that Damar's drinking problem is getting out of control. He's always liked to drink.
Yeah.
Quark was able to get information out of him by getting him drunk at the bar and things like that. But I think maybe the stresses of the war are now taking their toll. And he, like you say, he's drinking at work.
Yeah, and they're going out of their way to show him drinking. It's not just him sitting at a bar drinking. Now he's in his place of work, downing drink after drink. I like when Weyoun says something like, if I wasn't here, would you even bother with a glass? I thought that was a good question.
Yeah, Weyoun is even needling him here, and he doesn't seem to react to it. He's also a very changed Damar from the Damar with Dukat, who was like, I want to just toss them out of an airlock.
Well, he's drunk.
Okay, there is that. You think that might make him a little more belligerent?
It depends. Some people it just numbs. They do at least agree that Dukat releasing the Power Wraith into the wormhole has somehow shifted the war in their favor, which is unexpected. Damar wonders what's going on in the wormhole, and Weyoun doesn't really care. He says too much imagination can be dangerous, which is a very interesting line coming from a Vorta.
Well, I think that points at what the Vorta are. You know, they're programmed not to be imaginative or think outside the box because it could be a threat to the Founders.
Or not to be nosy about what the higher beings are doing.
Oh, that's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a statement here I thought was interesting. The momentum of the war has shifted in their favor. So my question here is, are the Power Wraiths, or that Power Wraith which Dukat released, actively helping the Dominion in some way?
Well, we have no way of knowing, but what Dukat said seems to be coming true.
Yeah.
That he hampered Sisko, so he's hampered the Federation.
Oh.
Is it just down to that? They lost their best strategist.
Yeah.
And maybe along with it, they lost their ambition. I don't know. It's a good question. Or could it be that the Power Wraiths are helping?
I took it as an indication that the Power Wraiths are somehow helping.
Okay.
That they're influencing either the Federation negatively or they're influencing the Dominion positively. But they're interfering.
Okay. It's as good of a guess as any at this point with the information we have. Well, back at the restaurant, and Sisko is using some software to record the image of the woman he saw in his vision. Jake says he's seen the face before in a photograph, and he runs off. He returns with a picture of the woman with a young Grandpa Joe, and Sisko shows the picture to Grandpa Joe, and he snaps the picture away, gets very mad, and stomps off.
Oh, yeah, he gets very upset and says, she's no one at all.
Yes.
So, something's up there.
Then why do you have the picture, Grandpa Joe? Come on.
I think the way Jake was talking to his dad at the beginning of this scene, I just get this real impression that Jake and Joe are walking on eggshells around Ben.
I agree.
They both know something's deeply wrong.
Yeah.
But they just don't seem to know what to do about it.
Yeah, I agree.
It's interesting because it feels like both of them are like acting out of character because of this, which I think is a really nice touch that you can see it with them.
Yeah, it's really hard to know what to do in this situation because not only is Sisko grieving the death of his close friend,
yes,
he feels responsible for it, and he also feels responsible for everything that happened with the wormhole and the prophets, and so he's doubting himself now and, not just grieving. So when you've got someone like that in your life who is grieving something that you're not grieving, it's very tough to know what to say to them.
Yeah.
So, and then on top of it, this prophet stuff, nobody knows anything about it but Sisko. Well, on the station, Worf is tossing and turning in his bed. He eventually heads to the holosuites and insists that Vic sing Jadzia's favorite song. And while he's singing, Worf gets more and more intense until he starts smashing up the tables.
I guess this is how Klingons express grief?
I guess. Now we go to the Romulan senator, whose name is absolutely forgettable. I just can't seem to remember it. And in my notes, I kept typing, Senator, what's her name? I just couldn't. I just don't remember. What I mostly remember is this actress, Megan Cole. She appeared on Seinfeld.
Yeah.
So that's what I remember her from. But I was struggling to remember this character just in the 40 minutes I watched this episode.
Senator, what's her name?
Anyway, yeah. Senator Who's It is she's ordering other Romulans around and getting her DS9 office all set up. Kira comes in and they have a very amicable meeting.
Yes.
As Senator Who's It says she knows her people have a well-earned reputation of being arrogant. And she says she has a good working relationship with Admiral Ross, and she hopes to have one with Kira as they work on their common goal of destroying the Dominion. Kira is surprised that she's not as annoying as she had expected.
Which I think should set off every red flag possible.
Mm-hmm.
I would be more trusting of her if this woman was more like Vreenak.
Oh, agreed. Yeah, it's very suspicious that she's acting this way. We've never seen a Romulan act this way.
And I'm wondering if after she said about their common goals, she said under her breath, and the conquest of the Alpha Quadrant for the Romulan Empire.
I mean, we've talked about this before, though. Not everybody on a planet can be exactly the same.
Yeah.
But the difference here, I think, is she's a senator, and we know how politicians are, at least the Romulan politicians.
Yes.
Or if she were in the military, we would know that. This isn't just a civilian.
Right. Do you think Kira deliberately assigned them the most uncomfortable chairs on the station?
No, I don't. I think Kira was right. All the chairs are uncomfortable, but that's a great question. Now Bashir and Quark are looking at the busted up holosuite bar. I mean, it's a holosuite. This is stupid. Just program new tables. I didn't understand this.
My note here says, Vic is squealing on Worf to Bashir.
Yeah.
Surely in the spirit of the holo program that Vic is in, he would know what happens to someone who rats.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Bashir is surprised Worf is still mourning Jadzia so heavily, as Klingon mourning periods are generally shorter. I mean, geez. You shouldn't be sad about your spouse dying anymore when, she was the love that you searched for your entire life. Just get over it, Worf.
She was half your Klingon heart.
I don't understand Julian sometimes.
Well, does this tie into the Julian being kind of neurodivergent?
No, okay. Maybe.
He doesn't really process things the way that most people do.
Yeah, and doesn't understand other people's emotions. Yeah. All right, I'll give you that one.
Final thing I'll say about this scene is I had a flashback moment to remembering when originally watching it how much I disliked the whole Vic storyline.
Yes, you were texting me while you were watching it. Yeah.
That'll probably annoy some people, but
I had known of the existence of Vic before, but I'd always wondered why people didn't talk about how great he was. I guess I just assumed that it was really good, and that's why it was such a big part of season 6 and season 7.
Yeah.
But as it turns out, no, it's really just terrible. So I don't know that there's a lot of people who are going to defend it. Back at the Sisko restaurant, and it's late at night, and everyone is in their jammies. Grandpa Joe is still not interested in talking until Sisko says he saw the woman in his vision. Grandpa Joe doesn't want to discuss it, and Sisko grabs his dad and shakes him dramatically before realizing what he's doing.
That was so disturbing.
Yeah.
Joe looks actually scared at this point.
It's not the first time Sisko's done something a little dramatic in front of Grandpa Joe.
The way he was behaving towards him, he was almost crazed.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Sisko eventually lets go and walks away, sitting at a nearby table. Grandpa Joe, finally realizing he can't hide it anymore, says her name was Sarah, and he says he met her in June of 31 in Jackson Square. She was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. Months later, they got married. And, oh, by the way, she was your real mother.
Wow, was that not an unbelievable reveal?
My notes say, what? That's not how you'd say that. Oh, yeah, and by the way, she's your real mom. It's no big deal.
What I thought was great here was Joe finally realizing what this was doing to Ben.
Yeah, he couldn't hide it anymore.
Yeah.
He needed to help him. Yeah.
And Avery here is just great.
Yeah. It's almost like he didn't realize that Sisko was waiting for a sign. That's what he was doing. He was waiting for the prophets to tell him something. And they gave him a sign. And then Ben was like, oh no. Or Grandpa Joe was like, I can't tell you about that. We're not going to talk about that.
Yeah.
He just wasn't prepared for how Sisko was going to react to that.
Right. Great acting from both of them here.
Yeah. And I have a note about this later where I'm not sure the writing is great or the dialogue is great in this scene, but I do think that these two save it with their acting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Well, it turns out Sarah is Sisko's mother, not the woman who raised him. Grandpa Joe and Sarah were married for 2 years, and he thought they were happy, but 2 days after Ben's first birthday, she just disappeared without a trace.
Yep.
He searched for her, but it took 3 years to find out she'd been living in Australia working as a holo photographer. Unfortunately, she had died in a hovercraft accident, so she was gone before Joe could see her again. Sisko asks why this is the first time he's heard of her, and Grandpa Joe says he just couldn't bring himself to tell Sisko about Sarah.
Yeah.
Especially considering the relationship that he had with his stepmother. But he realizes now it was a mistake. Sisko is annoyed, of course, but wonders if finding the truth about his mother is the first step in figuring out what he's supposed to do next.
Yes.
Grandpa Joe would like the prophets to keep their noses out of his personal business. Sorry, Joe, that's just not how this works.
Sisko does seem somewhat annoyed, but Joe does lift the mood a little, because Sisko asks if there's any other secrets he should tell him about. And Joe says, only my gumbo recipe, but I'm taking that to my grave.
Why? Why would you take your gumbo recipe? I do not understand why people won't give out their recipes, for crying out loud. Why do you want your food to die with you?
But Ben does sort of smile at the end.
Yeah, he smiles. It sort of because it's funny.
Lifts the scene at that last moment.
Agreed.
This was absolutely shocking to me at the time.
Well, yeah. Back on the station, and Kira sees Senator Who's It buying a Jumjaw stick on the promenade.
Senator what's her name?
I mean, it does seem like she's just trying to fit in on the station, which of course is suspicious for a Romulan.
Another red flag.
She tells Kira that a fleet of warbirds will be arriving at the station for refitting, and Kira says she'll warn Chief O'Brien to start replicating Romulan system modules. This impresses Senator What's-Her-Name. She didn't realize Bajorans were so efficient. It's such a broad stereotype about an entire planet of people. I mean, Kira is efficient. That doesn't mean everyone else on the planet is or isn't. Well, then the senator asks if Bajor's fourth moon could be used as a hospital. She says many of their wounded soldiers are dying on the long journey back to Romulus. Kira says she'll ask the Council of Ministers. Then they kind of nod at each other like things are going well, but they're still a little cautious.
Oh, dear. Did everybody forget you're dealing with Romulans here?
Yeah.
The answer is no.
Yeah, don't let them get a foothold into your territory. I think that's a terrible idea.
Yeah. To use the great Kirk quote, let them die.
Well, that was Klingons.
Same concept.
But yeah, same thing. Well, Bashir and Miles are now walking and talking on their way to Worf's quarters. The plan is to send Miles in with a bottle of blood wine and see what he can learn about Worf's current mental state.
Yes.
When Miles rings the bell, Worf tries to get rid of him, but he doesn't try, really hard.
No.
And they share a drink, and Miles says he's there to talk, and they reminisce about some old times on the Enterprise.
Is this the right approach, going to see someone who is grieving and depressed with a bottle of booze?
It seems appropriate for these guys, honestly.
It might, true, it might be
yes.
appropriate for Klingons.
Yeah.
They do mention Lieutenant Barclay as well.
They do, and Geordi.
And I have a soft spot for Barclay, mostly because he was Howling Mad Murdoch.
Yeah.
I did kind of like Barclay.
Not a fan.
He even got a cameo in First Contact.
He did, and Voyager. So the next day, Miles has a hangover, of course, and is in Quark's. Quark and Bashir are interested to hear what he learned from Worf, and it turns out Worf is miserable because Jadzia isn't in Sto-vo-kor, because she didn't die in glorious battle. If Worf could win a great battle in her name, she could still get into Sto-vo-kor, but of course they've been on convoy duty.
Yeah.
I was wondering how long the grace period lasts. I mean, is this forever? Could he win a battle in 20 years and she'd still get into Sto-vo-kor?
I don't see why not. I don't know what the rules are, but seems valid.
Yeah, I don't know what the rules are. Well, they do laugh about asking Admiral Ross for help, but they settle on Martok, which is a wise choice.
Much better choice.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about this here? Because I have a bone to pick.
Yes, pick your bone. Let's hear it.
Okay, so let's talk about Jadzia. She honored a blood feud.
Yeah.
Across hosts. She held the sword of Kalis.
Yeah.
In fact, she was in full possession of the sword, having taken it from 2 other Klingons.
Right.
She has a list of battle honors.
Yes.
And she was drawing her phaser when she was Wraith zapped.
Yeah, and she'd been in all kinds of battles just leading up to that.
Right.
Yeah.
How could you come to the conclusion?
The rules are foggy. And also, they don't know. Did they have it on video what happened there? I just don't understand this either.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, if the helm of that warbird that flew too close to the exploding Dominion ship and it took out the warbird in Sacrifice of Angels, if that helmsperson can make it to Sto-vo-kor, Jadzia can.
Definitely.
Plus,
no, it's a good
we
point.
know the Klingons are also pretty good at exaggeration or moving facts to how they fit their world.
Yeah.
Could you make the claim that Klingons are constantly at battle with aging? Like the Norse gods, they had a character who was the personification of aging. Could you do something like that with the Klingons and say every Klingon warrior is fighting against aging and slowing down and being less of a warrior? So all of them who continue to be warriors could be considered in battle every day. Like
in Children of Time, where Worf told them that time was the enemy.
Right. Yeah, that's a great example of it. So I think you could play around with the semantics of that. Klingons, I think, would be pretty good at that.
Definitely.
So, in summary, I think Jadzia would be amongst the honored dead.
I agree. If that's what she wants.
True.
Back in the alley behind the restaurant, and Sisko is scrubbing clams and missing Jadzia, Grandpa Joe gives him a piece of Sarah's jewelry that he'd kept. There's some writing on the back, which Sisko examines closely, saying it appears to be ancient Bajoran, which I feel like we all saw that coming when Sisko started looking at it closely.
Well, when Joe said there's some kind of writing on the back.
Yep. After the dramatic ad break, Sisko has managed to translate the inscription, which says, Orb of the Emissary, which should have had some real dramatic music that came with it when he said it. Yeah. Sisko has never heard of this orb, but he wonders if maybe it exists and it didn't go dark like all the other orbs when the wormhole closed.
Yeah.
He's pretty confident he's going to be able to find this orb, and he plans to start on Tyree, where he was in his vision.
And if you notice, Sisko on the desk in front of him has multiple pads.
Of course. He had to read multiple stories. It's like each website has its own pad.
I never noticed that until you pointed it out of, why would you need multiple pads? Can you just use your one iPad?
Yeah, you definitely would not. Back in the wardroom on the station, and Kira and the Senator are looking at the latest casualty list. The Senator has a weirdly upbeat attitude and is pleased that they at least now have a hospital complex on the Bajoran moon to help with casualties.
Yeah.
She thanks Kira, saying all of Romulus owes her a debt of gratitude.
Another red flag?
Oh, yeah. Well, and in the very next scene, we learn Kira is right to be suspicious of Senator Who's It, as Odo tells her the Romulan hospital complex denied help to injured Vulcans. And on top of that, the Romulans appear to be stockpiling plasma torpedoes on the moon.
Yes. Odo has some great information sources, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Maybe he should be running Starfleet intelligence.
Oh, maybe he should. Now in a holosuite, Worf is doing his usual Batleth exercises when Martok comes in and challenges him. They have a little battle, which Worf wins, of course. And Martok tells Worf he needs a first officer for a dangerous mission that will get Jadzia into Stovall. Worf immediately volunteers, of course, to be part of his mission.
Yeah, but first he, knocks Martok to the ground and punches him.
Yeah, but that's fun for them.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Back to the restaurant again. Sisko and Jake are laughing and happy, so you know something bad is coming.
Oh, Sisko's mood has done an absolute 180.
Yes. Well, he has a plan now. He's going to go to Tyree. Yep.
He is back to the very upbeat Ben Sisko we know and love.
Yeah. Yes.
Just this little segment as well seems so natural. These two are just great together. And the chemistry.
Oh, when they're laughing about something.
Yeah.
Sisko hits him with a towel and they laugh. Yeah. It is very natural.
It's great to watch.
Sisko heads into the alley behind the restaurant and he finds a hooded figure standing in the dark.
Jedi or Sith Lord, one of the two.
One of the two. The person says, "Emissary, I've come a long way to see you. This moment is sacred, one that will be long remembered." And then he says some ancient Bajoran stuff, and when Sisko tries to brush him off, the guy says, "Your work is finished. The orb you're seeking, the orb of the emissary," which gets Sisko's attention.
Yeah.
But he doesn't see the attack coming as this guy pulls out a huge dagger and stabs Sisko in the stomach. And then he completes his sentence saying, "You're never going to find it," meaning the orb.
Yeah.
But before he can attack again or run off, Jake hits him over the head from behind, knocking him out. And then Jake rushes to Sisko, calling to Grandpa Joe for help.
I was really surprised that would not be the cut for the episode.
Well, it could have been, although I think what we're finding in these last couple of seasons is that they would have been doing to be continued at the end of every episode. And I think they were trying hard not to do that. So they at least wanted to wrap it up a little more. I mean, they do still give us a big shocker to come. But yeah, I get your point. And in fact, after I watched this the first time and then came back several days later, I did think that's how it ended. I'd forgotten. Well, in the next scene, Sisko and Jake return from the hospital and Sisko is fine. We learn the attacker was one of the members of the Pa-Wraith cult. I didn't see his armband, though. This cult believes the disappearance of the prophets will herald a new era for Bajor. Grandpa Joe isn't worried about the cult, but he is worried about something else. He says if the cult knows his son is looking for the orb, then the Pa-Wraiths do too. I think he's right to be worried about the Pa-Wraiths.
And that worries me, he says.
Yeah, I think he's right.
Joe is just awesome.
Now back at Quark's, and Miles and Bashir are toasting to Worf's new mission. Quark is dubious, saying an entire Klingon fleet already failed when trying to destroy the Dominion shipyards on Monak 4, and he wonders how one ship is going to do any better. Sounds like a suicide mission to him.
Yep.
Well, it turns out Julian has also volunteered to go on the mission because he wants to help Jadzia get into Stovall.
His role will be to annoy the Klingons on the bridge.
Oh yeah, he's going to stand between them and talk.
Yep.
Quark and Miles wonder if maybe Jadzia doesn't want to go to Stovall, but Julian wants the chance to honor her memory. This makes Miles decide he wants in as well. He says he wants to make sure Julian comes back in one piece. And Quark says they're both nuts.
I like that. I liked how Miles basically volunteered to go because of Julian. I like that in the friendship, that Miles is prepared to stick his neck out for Bashir.
And also he's bored. I think if something happens to Julian, then what the heck's he going to do? So
I also saw it as a Miles maybe looking at Julian as he can be an idiot and make rash decisions. Somebody needs to be there to keep him grounded in reality.
In another part of the station, Admiral Ross and Senator Huzet are having a meeting when Kira storms in with a message from the Bajoran Council of Ministers. Remember when it was the Bajoran Provisional Government all the time?
Oh, yeah. We used to have a lot of drinks over that.
We can drink when they say Council of Ministers. This is easily the third time we've heard it in this episode. Well, anyway, they want the Romulans and their 7,000 secret plasma torpedoes off their moon. Ross wants to discuss a compromise, but Kira says there are no compromises, and either the Romulans remove those weapons or the Bajorans will do it for them.
Oh, Kretak tries to deflect with, they're for defensive purposes only.
Yeah, because who is going to attack a hospital? I mean, okay, whatever.
Right.
Well, I love this version of Kira. She came in strong. I liked it.
Well, she delivers that great ultimatum.
Yep.
Either remove those weapons or we will.
Yep. Love it.
Honestly, I think this is the approach they should have taken with Starfleet from the start. These admirals seem to be more puffed up, pen-pushing bureaucrats.
Yeah, they are.
Honestly, Kira should ask, is Starfleet really that gullible? You're dealing with Romulans. Are you that naive?
Yeah. I don't think they're naive. I think they're okay with it.
Oh gosh, it's a long way from paradise.
Yeah, but also they can't fight this war without them. So I think that even if they knew, they were going to allow it.
So they would be prepared to ultimately sacrifice Bajor to the Romulans.
They don't care about Bajor. Only Sisko cares about Bajor.
Well, it's a long way away from paradise, and they're very happy in their ivory towers. And
they're not part of the Federation.
Wow, that's worse than just being incompetent.
Agreed.
It's they're playing the worst kind of realpolitik.
Well, back to a depressing Cardassia. That's all I think every time they go back there. And Weyoun is thrilled to learn about the rift between the Bajorans and the Romulans. He and Damar feel like this is something that could destroy the Alliance. Just another reason for Damar to have another drink, as far as I can tell.
And Weyoun points out the Romulans being treacherous as normal.
Yeah. Doing what they should have expected.
I think Starfleet needs to recruit a Vorta. They've got Iggy Pop on ice somewhere. Maybe they could offer him a deal or something. Because I think we've seen that the Vorta aren't really that loyal. Because you could, explain plans to the Vorta, things that are going on, and then the Vorta could address them with a sense of reality. Going, oh yeah, they're totally going to go and set up a military base. It's not a hospital.
The Rocks and Shoals guy would have definitely helped them.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't care.
He could give them a dose of this sort of realistic cynicism that the Vorta have.
Yeah. Well, back at the restaurant again, and Sisko is getting ready to go to Tyree, but not without Grandpa Joe and Jake. They aren't letting him go alone, and Grandpa Joe has closed the restaurant so he can make the trip. Jake says something here like, I even packed my toothbrush, like he wouldn't normally pack his toothbrush. That was such a weird line. You should always bring your toothbrush.
There's some great lines here because Ben says, have you both lost your minds? And Joe just replies with, apparently it runs in the family.
That's cute.
Oh, man, this is great.
There's a knock at the restaurant door, and it's a young woman in a Starfleet uniform, and she says she's here to see Ben.
She's a very short woman, too.
She is. When Sisko doesn't recognize this person who refers to him as Ben, she introduces herself as Dax.
It's me, Dax.
The end.
Wow.
That was fun. It was a fun way to introduce her.
That was awesome.
All right. Do you have over-analysis?
Yes, I do. Including observations. But I guess I always do that anyway.
Yeah. If we didn't have observations, what are we doing this podcast for?
First point.
Yeah.
I just wish we'd seen Kai win during this time. I think that could have been glorious.
I'm convinced she's behind the cult of the Pah-wraiths. She's got an armband on. She's all in. Well, I don't know. At this point, she might still be playing both sides, but she could literally be in with the Pah-wraiths. Like maybe the Pah-wraiths talked to her, even though the prophets never did.
Oh, because she's so bitter about the prophets never speaking to her.
Yeah, and she completely helped them, but yeah, they don't care. They're evil. I don't know. She could be in every episode this season, and I would be happy.
We do get to see more of her this season.
I hope so. We didn't get a lot of her last season. I think only one episode, right?
I believe so.
We should have only had one episode of Dukat and 20 episodes of Kaiwin.
Dukat, I'm afraid, is important.
It doesn't make me like him.
I think that's the point. Next thing.
Yeah.
After 6 seasons, we finally do get an answer to everyone on Bajor can't believe the exact same thing.
Yes.
The cult of the Pah-wraiths.
Yes.
You brought that up a long time ago, and here we are.
Absolutely. We were talking about how there would have been a church erected for Kira when the prophet took over her body.
Yep.
When the guy from Accession came out of the wormhole. Yeah, Akorum. Oh, yeah. There's no way everybody believes the same thing.
The Church of the True Emissary.
Although, okay, here's a headcanon.
Okay, go.
Maybe when the prophets, I don't know, it's not that they're gone, but they've retreated, or maybe they're hiding because we don't know what's going on in the wormhole.
Yeah.
But maybe when the wormhole was open, maybe they did have some control over the Bajorans, and we're helping keep peace.
So sort of a subliminal, or
maybe
giving visions to the Bajorans through the orbs to try and help. I mean, Sisko said that himself. They try and guide the Bajorans.
That's true. That they were, guiding and protecting sort of Bajor. Yeah, so maybe they did have some kind of impact on the planet overall. I mean, we saw some other factions way back season 2.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that was more of a political faction, I thought. Bajor for the Bajorans.
That's true. They weren't against the prophets. Yeah. So maybe the unleashing of the Power Wraiths really has caused these rifts.
That's an interesting take. Because I was wondering as well, where is this knowledge coming from about the cult of the Power Wraiths? Are there banned Bajoran documents? Are there books of prophecies that they don't want to talk about? Or is just everything in there?
Well, I bet there are prophecies of negative things too.
Yeah.
I mean, the stories of evil have to be alongside the stories of good. Otherwise, good's not a thing.
Oh, and some people look at the evil ones and go, hey, my kind of people, my guys. Because Odo does make that comment early on about some people turn to hate in times of trouble.
Yeah, it makes them comfortable. Way back in the episode where we first met a Power Wraith that took over Keiko.
Yes.
The assignment.
Right.
We learned about the story of the Power Wraiths and how they were like false prophets, or they were kicked out of the temple.
Yes.
Right?
Banished.
So it's possible if you were not having a good time on Bajor, like your crops weren't coming through, or you couldn't find a job, or you couldn't feed your family, or you just weren't happy, you didn't feel like the prophets were doing anything for you, you might turn to something else. And that story of the Power Wraiths getting kicked out of the temple might have had meaning to you.
Oh.
Like, oh, you mean like how you're not doing anything for me?
Yeah.
It's impossible to guess the thousands of different reasons that somebody might have for turning to someone else. Right. But you could almost see it because there were stories about the Power Wraiths.
Right.
So,
sort of whatever the prophet's done for me, the Power Wraiths haven't done anything that's hurt me. So, interesting.
Maybe things would be better if the prophets weren't around.
That's a good point. You could see that as maybe this is happening on Bajor now with the rise of the cult. You're having people looking at it and saying, well, the prophets actually never did anything beneficial for me. So why have I spent so much time and effort on them?
Yeah, exactly.
Next thing, sticking with the prophets. Now, Jake remembering the photo because he just happened to be cleaning up stuff in the attic or wherever it was.
Yeah.
Coincidence?
No.
Or are the prophets influencing and manipulating Jake as well?
Yeah, I think that's a stretch that it would be a coincidence.
Yeah.
And also, when you're looking at photos and there's a face that you've never seen before, I don't think you retain it that easily.
So we're both agreeing prophets are also manipulating Jake. He's part of the story.
Some influence. Or the prophets drop that photo in front of him.
Oh.
Like they did the baseball.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, I think there was some influence there. Yep.
So that makes it interesting of Jake is as much a part of the prophet's schemes and plans as his dad.
Yeah, we've seen it before.
He's also been the vessel of a Power Wraith.
Exactly.
He has kind of a unique perspective.
He does.
And I also had my rant about Jadzia's in Stovercore, so we can skip that one.
All right.
If anyone deserves it, it's her.
They just treat Jadzia really badly. It's bad. Well, I only had 2 points here before I go to women in the future.
Go.
One of them was Sisko should have been more wary of a person standing in a dark alley with a hood over his head.
Dressed like a Sith Lord, yeah.
I mean, come on. And then my other one is never trust a Romulan, even one from Seinfeld. That was my other observation.
A pleasant Romulan. Every red flag should go on.
Yeah, very suspicious. It was like those pleasant Cardassians, although they didn't turn out to be so bad.
Yeah, those were surprising.
Because they were scientists, I guess. They weren't politicians, yeah.
I don't think you succeed in the Romulan Senate without being a really awful person.
Oh, treacherous. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to women in the future. And I don't have a lot. Very happy to meet this Romulan senator, what's her name, who's as treacherous as any Romulan. That's fine. She's just doing her job. And by the way, she knows how to be a little sneaky because she's learned if she builds some relationships, she probably gets away with more. So she's even more manipulative than the usual Romulan. So yeah, it's good.
And she doesn't have the giant imposing shoulders either.
She doesn't. No, she's looking pretty sleek, actually, I thought, in her outfit.
Even scarier.
And Kira is just doing her job. Taking names and kicking asses. Love that about her.
Running the station
and apparently doing a perfectly good job. She's been promoted, so she's also been recognized. So, yeah, all good.
And she just lays down the law to the Starfleet Admiral as well.
Yeah, if he thinks that he's going to have any sort of ability to intimidate Kira, he has not spent enough time with her. I think what he's forgotten is that the reason she listens to Sisko is he is the emissary.
Right, well, Starfleet downplays that.
Yes, they don't respect it.
Worse than downplaying it. They don't respect it. Exactly.
All right, let's move on to rating. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. What is your rating?
Absolute thumbs up. Love this episode. The acting from all the Siskos, the way the story progresses, the reveals, the throwing in the prophets again. The whole thing works as a great, enjoyable episode. I don't know how many times I've watched it. I find it enjoyable every time.
I agree. Thumbs up. Great opening to season 7.
Yep.
I really enjoyed this episode. I thought the acting of Brock Peters and Avery Brooks saved some clumsy writing.
Oh, yes.
About Sarah, right? I thought that was actually very good.
Oh, yeah.
And it's something kind of strange that would really only apply to me. But every time I would go to IMDb and then would have to, would go to the episode guide to switch to the episode we were releasing so I could look for the guest stars and whatever, they would show a picture for season 7 from this episode, and it would be when Sisko is trying to recreate the face of the woman that he saw in his vision.
Yeah.
And so I've seen that little iPad thing he's holding with a face in it, but you know how I am. I don't want spoilers. So I purposely don't focus on it. Don't look closely at it. I don't try to figure out who that is. I don't want to know. I prefer to let it come to me organically. But every time I've seen that, and it's been going on now for 7 seasons, and I quickly flip away from it, I have assumed that was Jennifer.
Oh.
I am so happy it was not Jennifer.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because I think you know how I feel about that character. So I'm perfectly happy it's actually his mother, not his wife.
Yeah.
His former wife.
That is too funny.
Yeah, it is funny.
So that's a good start to season 7. 2 thumbs up from the both of us. And also a really good episode. Agreed.
I think we usually like the season openers. I'd have to go back. I don't think there's been a bad season opener.
And I loved the reintroduction of Dax.
Yeah. It was very quick, though. I mean, we don't go without a Dax even for an episode.
Yes.
Which is unexpected. You got to move fast. Got to keep things moving.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that wraps up season 7, episode 1. Come back next week for episode 2. In the meantime, if you'd like to send us your own over-analysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, you can email us at rebingeit@gmail.com or tweet us at rebingeit. We're also on Instagram and YouTube at rebingeit. You can also go to talkthroughmedia.com where you can leave feedback for individual episodes.
Thanks for joining us on the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.